We're Citizen Matters, and my name is Lalita. I'm the engagement associate at the Mumbai chapter of Citizen Matters, and we're a media organization reporting on critical urban issues. And this month's topic is Make Mumbai Safer for Women, Dialogues, Resources, and Helplines. So I welcome you all to the webinar, and I would now like to request Prachi, my colleague, to take over, introduce Citizen Matters and the kind of work that we're doing pertaining to the topic of the month. Prachi, over to you.
Thanks. Thank you, Lalita. Good evening, everybody. So happy to see all of you here. And I'm really glad all of you could join in this evening, short notice and all of that. I know everyone had very busy schedules. So really a very heartfelt thank you to all of you. Very quickly, I'll introduce what Citizen Matters does and why we chose this topic for this month's event actually. So Citizen Matters is a civic media platform that looks at critical urban issues, ideas, and solutions for better cities. We dive deep into issues that affect our quality of life. Basically, some issues like water, commute, public safety, air quality, governance, education, local economy, and so on. Our work is defined by a collaborative model. So we have professional journalists doing regular journalistic stories, analysis, in-depth reportage. And at the same time, we also have citizen contributors who could be practitioners, experts, citizens who are engaged in a particular issue over time. We also really encourage solution-based write-ups and journalism and initiatives that people would like to take up and talk about. So that is pretty much what Citizen Matters does. And we are a small team in Mumbai. We have two reporters and Lalita, who's engagement associate. So we try to do as much as we can, touching up upon issues that are important to our everyday life. So for this particular topic, why we chose this topic, actually, it's not a new topic. It's been bothering us for the longest time. So the trigger for this topic was a few developments that happened. One was the Praja report that once again revealed that most of the cases about sexual harassment remain pending. They also result in acquittals most of the times. So firstly, you have cases that never really go through the prosecution and the rest of the trial. And even if they do, they result in acquittals. So we have more than 90%, 80% of those are the figures that they reported in their report on sexual offenses and it was about Mumbai. So that was one thing. Secondly, and more importantly, we reported on the ordeal of a woman who approached the police for registering her complaint when she was molested on train. So she wrote for us. She didn't want to be identified. So her experiences are recorded on our website. And that was one of the things, and what she spoke to, confided in our reporter, was also quite disturbing. So the other couple of other stories that we did which was seemingly not related to safety, but about access to toilets at railway stations. And one of the factors that women respondents talked about was about safety. So, if it is dark, if it is locked, if there are no people, you don't feel safe in accessing these places. And these are probably the places where they fear that they would be harassed. So all this really made us ask, is institutional help really accessible to women? We often think that it's not accessible. We have many records of women saying it is not accessible, which also leads to women probably not even trying for it, right? So that is really important to kind of get into, as to what can women do, and how should we really try to get closer to a gender just society, and what can we do as a community to, have infrastructure that helps women to access these mechanisms? What are the mechanisms, and what are the challenges really? Why don't these mechanisms work if they don't work? So we have four panelists here, experts in their own field of research and writing, and constantly talking about it. All of you have a great experience in not just advocacy, but also understanding what really is the deeper problem, what really needs to be addressed. So I would really, really love to listen to all of you and understand what you have to say about this, and basically what we can do at community level to build and maintain, and what are the changes that we want in the infrastructure, so that the city becomes more accessible and safer for women of all ages, and of all women as who identify themselves as women. So all of them. So I hand it over to you, Lalita. Please, and just one short kind of instruction is that if audience has any questions or comments, please post them on the YouTube streaming link, and they will be taken up in the question and answer session. Thank you very much. Once again, I thank you all so much for joining. And yes, Lalita, over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Prachi. So, to introduce our panel for today, Samira Khan. Samira Khan is an independent journalist, researcher, and co-author of the acclaimed book Why Loiter. And the book examines women's access to public spaces. And she's been active in teaching, in research, and in writing on media, gender, the question of Muslim women, and the city. So she is also the recipient of the National Ladli Media Award for Gender Justice 20 Gender Sensitivity 2020, and her consistent engagement as a teacher, trainer, and researcher on specifically gender-based violence has, she has shared a lot of, path-breaking work, and we're really happy to have you on the panel, Samira. To go on, Harish Sadani. Harish Sadani is the co-founder and executive director of he's the co-founder and executive director of Men Against Violence and Abuse MAVA, where he works with young men and boys to prevent violence on women. So he has been active in engaging and mentoring thousands of adolescent boys and young men across the country to address issues like healthy relationships, toxic masculinity, deconstructing the kind of toxic masculinity prevalent in the society, and sexuality related matters, to sort of redefine masculinity using out of the box methods like interactive workshops, cultural magazines, street theater, short films, and organizing film festivals. And apart from this, he's also the consultant and trainer to various organizations to where he speaks on gender sensitivity, sexual harassment at the workplace, and other gender matters. And he's also the recipient of the Ashoka Changemakers Award and the Maharashtra Foundation Award. I thank you, Harish, for being part of the panel. Moving on, we have Kamlesh Sharma. Kamlesh has worked in the Mumbai Railway Police Department as the police naik for 4 years. He was part of the control room on the Women's Safety Helpline. Now he's he's a physical educator at a school in Delhi, and he's also a student of law. And while working on the safety helpline, he often went out of the way. And Harish also reiterated this in my conversation with him earlier about how he would go beyond his jurisdiction and provide help through the local police station, through the helpline, in tracking blackmailing cases, in teasing cases, in domestic abuse related complaints. Thank you, Kamlesh. We're really happy to have you as part of this panel. And to our last speaker, she's Reshma Jagtap. She's the program coordinator for legal systems at SNEHA in the Prevention of Violence Against Women and Children program. She is a lawyer, and she was earlier part of the Human Rights Law Network, and currently she's the legal coordinator at SNEHA. Thank you, Reshma ma'am, for joining. And just like Prachi mentioned earlier, I request you all, before we begin the panel discussion, to add in all your comments, your feedback, your questions in the chat box. And you can also DM us or inbox us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter keep following our Twitter for the live thread related to the event. And I request you all to share your questions, keep sharing your feedback with us, and we'll try our best to address them at the end of the question answer discussion, which is the last 15 to 20 minutes. And we request you to not engage in any kind of trolling and abuse during the event. And so we'll now begin with the panel discussion. I really look forward to speaking to all of you. Feel free to pitch in. And as I mentioned earlier, each speaker will be allocated 4 to 5 minutes per question. So to start off, I'd like to ask Samira, why do you think that cities continue to remain unsafe for women? What has your experience been regarding, from your research regarding the kind of issues that women face with respect to access and other infrastructural deficits in the city? Samira, over to you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Citizen Matters. Very nice to be here. I know it's a topic we've often talked about. It's always talked about in the media, in society. We constantly talked about when we use the words women and public space, particularly we're using the word danger and safety after that. And it's a perpetual discussion, but I think it's worthwhile having it to figure out new methods and new approaches and how we have to keep pushing against it. And I feel it's an issue. Before I sort of move on to sharing some of these things, which we did in our part of our research in Why Loiter, when we were researching for a 3-year research project looking at women in public space, and we looked at that. I really want to say that a lot of people think this is an impossible task, that women outside will, women will never be safe. And possibly it's true. I mean, all of us, not just women, but all kinds of people, we can never achieve maybe a society. But I think it's a worthwhile task to, and if you just look at one particular campaign in Bombay, which has been very successful, which doesn't relate to women and safety, which is successful, you realize that the same model could be used if you have the same approach. So it's about really twisting our thinking. So if you look at the campaign against drunk driving, for example, the zero tolerance against drunk driving, which this city took as an initiative several years ago, but took it to such a great extent, such an amazing extent, that people were now getting designated drivers. People in Bombay were talking about people were hiring drivers for the evening. They went out for a party. People were actually talking about who in their group of friends was not drinking or would drop them home, or they would not take a private vehicle, they would go public transport. They actually were thinking actively about the consequences of that. And I think, and the city really took it up, and the traffic cops and all, it was the law and order situation took it. You pass it on to the citizens, and everybody took it as a very important initiative. So I think it's like that, it's like that. So if you have a zero tolerance policy established towards harassment, everyday street harassment, it's possible. It's about really having the will for doing that. So our research, which we were researching Bombay and women in public space, one of the very important things we looked at, a lot of people said, why are you looking at Bombay? This is the mid-2000s when we started our project. Why Bombay? Bombay is such a friendly city for women. Relatively, I think Bombay still is, or Mumbai still is a relatively friendlier city to women than any other city in the country. But the thing is, the city is changing. So things which worked earlier may not work so well, especially if you've not given resources or paid attention to it. So, for example, one of the reasons why Mumbai was always very good with this is one of the points was about its public transport system, and the fact that the public transport system looked at providing for women separately. We are one of the earliest cities in the country to ever have women to commute 22 kilometers in the 1970s to work. Which never, Bombay, Delhi, the metro comes so late, so many other cities, public transport comes late, but Bombay shows that. Not only does it provide public transport for all citizens, but especially looks after for the working woman. The guys, women travel, commute, drop children, go to markets, whatever. The other fact that Mumbai had mixed zoning, and this really made a difference. So you often had commercial areas and residential areas together with each other, which means there was always light on the streets. So your shops were down, people stayed on top, mixed. Now, by the new smart city planning is the worst kind of planning. Little bit of this, a little bit of that is not required. We need to have exclusive office areas, exclusive residential areas. But actually, that has really changed the problem. The way when you design differently the city, you have other problems which crop up. So you have something like BKC, Bandra Kurla complex, fully office complex. You see it at night, it's dead. It's dead on the street. You don't want to walk from your office building to your friend's office building next door to catch it. So it is these pavements are empty and dead and dark. Now you've designed it that we designed, we will not have hawkers, we will shut off, we will not have anybody living here, we will just have these places. Now these sanitized spaces you're going to have are actually unsafe. When I have the idli wala sitting there, someone selling me something, one Petromax lantern lit over there, some other street, you have a little bit higgledy-piggledy, these messy city or edges actually make it safer for women and all other categories of people who feel vulnerable. Not just women, there are many other marginalized who don't feel, So I feel we really need to figure out who are we designing these cities for, and this design has an implication on all other structures. For example, safety. It has an implication of that. One of the things is to really understand that. Secondly, that though Mumbai is a relatively friendlier city to women, still statistically, there are very few women really found in public space, even in Mumbai. So at commuting hubs, at bus stations and railway stations, you'll find them at peak hours. But relatively, it's rarely more than we found 20% of that crowd is women actually. So never more than that. And they, we sort of trailed women, we mapped them, we saw them at lunchtime in Nariman Point, how they came down from offices, took lunch, went back, didn't idle at the street corner, unlike their male colleagues did. So they approach whole thing of public space very differently. And so they are visible in places, definitely in Bombay. It's not that it's a city where you don't see women, you do see it compared to many other smaller towns in India. Though it's changing. India is changing so rapidly, you're seeing much more presence of that. But in terms of access to public space, you do not see them as claimants, as claiming public space for their own, as full citizens. You see them, somehow making their way, doing jugaad and figuring out their way. So all the things which help them, I'm hoping we come up in the discussion with regard to infrastructure, whether you look at public toilets or you look at provision of law and order, or commuter, of course, public transport in all ways, how you design, or public parks, spaces, how you design them makes a lot of difference to women access them or not. And I'd like other speakers to speak now, but I would just like to say one more point, that basically, the discussion of safety is a good discussion, but it shouldn't be limited to that. In discussing safety and discussing public space in terms of danger and safety, we forget that the larger discussion really has to be about accessibility. Accessibility of women, but also other marginalized citizens, differently able citizens, senior citizens, children, the other kinds of groups of marginalized people are poor. A lot of the poor are being pushed to the margins of the city. We have to look at that. Who are you building the city for? Is it going to be one class of people? And you want the labor of these working class people, and you don't want to see them there. I think we need to think about a lot of these issues of what kind of city we are imagining for ourselves. And safety then becomes an important part for everybody.
Thank you, Samira. I think you brought up a very pertinent issue about accessibility. And then we move on to the kind of accessibility that women currently have towards the infrastructures in place. You mentioned public parks and bus stations and such. We would also like to focus on the other kind of infrastructure in place to address the question of safety, that is the law enforcement that is in place, the police, the other mechanisms that women approach, be it helplines, be it lawmakers as well, for redressal for gender-based violence. So we read a recent study about Prachi mentioned the Praja report, where the Praja report talks about how 92% of the cases, serious offenses related to gender-based violence, have not undergone trial. And another recent study revealed that 70% women respondents in Mumbai don't know the helpline numbers while traveling by local trains. And so how is it that, such a high number of cases aren't going to trial, one, and also the fact that women aren't aware about the kind of infrastructure in place to address women's safety? I think that Kamlesh and Reshma will also be able to weigh in on this. So Kamlesh, firstly, I would like to ask you, how is it for you while working on the Women's Safety Helpline? What were the challenges that you faced? Would you like to share about your experiences on that? Kamlesh, you're on mute.
Thanks for giving opportunity to me. First of all, women safety, while traveling in a local train, railway police providing, or railway commissioner is providing police in after 8:30. और 8:30 के बाद में पुलिस प्रोवाइड की जाती है हर लोकल ट्रेन में 8:30 PM के बाद में. But it is not possible to provide police in every woman bogie, in ladies bogie. So therefore they are providing police only in 3 bogies, which is towards the CST side, second in first class, and third in middle second class. तो ये तीन बोगी में पुलिस प्रोवाइड की जाती है। एंड सबसे मेन थिंग क्या होती है, वुमेन्स को ये सोचना पड़ेगा, ये जानना पड़ेगा, दे आर नॉट एट द वीकर सेक्शन ऑफ द सोसाइटी। फर्स्ट एंड फॉल दे उसको सेल्फ कॉन्फिडेंस उनको डेवलप करना पड़ेगा। सेकंड एंड फॉल, जो मैडम समीरा मैडम बोल रही थी कि टॉयलेट्स, शी इज टॉकिंग अबाउट द टॉयलेट्स, यस, most of station most of on the most of the station we will not find a toilet for the women's, and it's a very मतलब पैथेटिक चीज है कि वो नहीं मिल पाता। और सेकंड एंड फॉल, जब वुमेन्स ट्रेवल करती है तो लोकल बोगी में, तो उनके पास मतलब ऐसा सिस्टम गवर्नमेंट डेवलप करना चाहिए स्पेशली फॉर द वुमेन्स बोगी के लिए, कि वहां पर एक माइक हो इन केस ऑफ द इमरजेंसी। मोस्ट ऑफ टाइम जो हेल्पलाइंस होती है या मोबाइल नेटवर्क होता है वो वर्किंग नहीं कर पाता, तो वो इमरजेंसी के टाइम पे जैसे चेन पुलिंग होता है उसी टाइम पे एक ऐसा स्पीकर या बटन देना चाहिए जो डायरेक्ट मोटरमैन और गार्ड को तुरंत पता चले कि यहाँ पर कुछ इमरजेंसी है और उसको हेल्प चाहिए। तो तुरंत रनिंग ट्रेन में या आफ्टर दी मतलब रनिंग ट्रेन में इट इज नॉट पॉसिबल, जैसे कोई स्टेशन आता है वैसे उसको तुरंत सेफ्टी प्रोवाइड या प्रोटेक्शन प्रोवाइड की जाए। तो माइक के बारे में मैं कहूंगा कि जो वुमेन्स की जो बोगीज होती है उसमें माइक होना जरूरी है। और समीरा मैडम जो बोल रही थी कि हेल्पलाइन, वुमेन्स हेल्पलाइन, मोस्ट ऑफ वुमेन्स डोंट नो द हेल्पलाइन इन रेलवेज, बट आई डोंट थिंक सो, क्योंकि हर बोगी में हेल्पलाइन होती है 1512। अर्लियर इट वाज इज 9833312222, इट वाज अ निर्भया हेल्पलाइन। तो 1512 it is not only for the women but for the everyone. Or again there is a WhatsApp number is also is there, 95948 4 time 91 and 84250 4 time 1 4 time 91। तो ये WhatsApp हेल्पलाइन है जिसपे आप है ना WhatsApp, समटाइम क्या होता है कि लेडीज है ना कॉल करके बता नहीं सकती कि मेरे ये जो मेरे को डायरेक्ट स्टेयर कर रहा है, डायरेक्ट कुछ कर रहा है, क्योंकि उसको कंफर्म नहीं होती है और उसको सेफ्टी के हिसाब से वो बता नहीं सकती। तो एटलीस्ट वो मैसेज टाइप करके नेक्स्ट स्टेशन पे वो हेल्प मांग सकती है कि मुझे ये हेल्प चाहिए है और आप मुझे हेल्प प्रोवाइड कीजिए, और तुरंत पुलिस पहुंच जाती है। और मतलब गुड थिंग रेलवे पुलिस का ये है, हर रेलवे स्टेशन पे 24/7 पुलिस अवेलेबल रहती है इन केस ऑफ द इमरजेंसी। जैसे को रेलवे स्टेशन पे उस टाइम पे हो सकता है, लेकिन 24/7 एवरी टाइम पुलिस प्रेजेंट ऑन द रेलवे स्टेशन, ऑन एवरी रेलवे स्टेशन। तो ये एक पॉजिटिव थिंग्स है वुमेन सेफ्टी के हिसाब से। सेकंड एंड फॉल, वुमेन्स को भी अवेयर होना चाहिए कि हमको ना उसी बोगी में ट्रेवल करना चाहिए जहाँ पे पुलिस इजीली अवेलेबल है, ना कि ना वैसी बोगी में जाके बैठे कि उसमें अवेलेबल ना हो। और मैंने ड्यूरिंग इसके टाइम पे जब मैं कंट्रोल रूम में था, निर्भया हेल्पलाइन पे काम कर रहा था, जब निर्भया का जो केस हुआ था 2012 में, दिसंबर 2012 में, उसके बाद में निर्भया हेल्पलाइन की गठन हुई गई, ऑर्गेनाइज की गई। उसमें स्पेशली फोकस किया गया वुमेन्स को हेल्प करने के लिए, और वुमेन्स को हेल्प किया गया। मोस्ट ऑफ टाइम वो दे आर नॉट फीलिंग सेफ व्हाइल ट्रैवलिंग इन नाइट। और मोस्ट ऑफ जो मुंबई की जो वुमेन्स है वो लेट वर्किंग करती है। तो एक लेडी थी जो घाटकोपर से चढ़ती थी और आसन गांव में उतरती थी, और शी इज अ रेगुलर पैसेंजर, और क्या कहते शी वाज एन एयर होस्टेस। तो वो हमेशा करती थी कि थैंकफुल करती थी कि हमेशा मुझे पुलिस मिलती है और पुलिस प्रोटेक्शन देता है मुझे, और मैं सेफली पहुंचती हूँ। उसने बहुत बार उन्होंने सीपी को कहते ईमेल से या लेटर भेज के उन्होंने अप्रिशिएट भी किया था कि आपने जो एक्शन ले रखा है, जो अपने हेल्पलाइन कर रखी है, उसके कारण हमको हेल्प प्रोवाइड होती है और मैं सेफली इतने लेट नाइट में वर्क करके सेफली मैं घर पे पहुंच सकती हूँ। तो मेरे ख्याल से मुंबई रेलवे पुलिस अच्छे से वर्क कर रही है अंडर द जुडिक्शन और गोइंग बियॉन्ड द जुडिक्शन, वो हेल्प करने की कोशिश करती है। और इवन टू नॉट इवन टू पुलिस आर वेरी मच कोऑपरेटिव इन रेलवे पुलिस। समीरा मैम अगेन सेइंग दैट कि मोलेस्टेशन का केस हुआ था और पुलिस ने हेल्प नहीं किया, आई एम नॉट एग्री विद यू, बिकॉज police are not always helping in such cases, molestation cases. Because police are doing the help of every woman who have the grievance. डोमेस्टिक केसेस का होता है, डोमेस्टिक केसेस में रेलवे कुछ कर नहीं सकती, लेकिन रेलवे जितना प्रोवाइड होती है वो उतना करती है. दैट्स ऑल मैम, थैंक यू.
थैंक यू कमलेश जी, आपने आपके एक्सपीरियंस के बारे में शेयर किया और आपके सजेशन के बारे में भी, बोगी में जो माइक का सजेशन आपने दिया है. तो रेशमा मैम से मैं ये पूछना चाहूंगी कि अभी हमने ये जो स्टडीज के बारे में बताया और जो प्राची ने बताया था कि जो जिसको कंप्लेन रजिस्टर करने में दिक्कत हुई थी, तो आपका क्या एक्सपीरियंस रहा एज अ लॉयर? आपने बहुत सारे केसेस पर काम किया है, आपने जो चैलेंजेस फेस किए, आपके एक्सपीरियंसेस जो हैं, मतलब वो जो केस था जिसके बारे में हमने कवरेज किया था, उस केस में हमने ये पाया था कि जब वो पुलिस स्टेशन गई थी तभी बहुत सारे ऐसे इंसिडेंट्स इस केस में भी, और ऐसे इंसिडेंट्स ये भी हैं कि विक्टिम को बहुत बार ब्लेम किया जाता है. तो क्या आपको लगता है कि ऐसे आपके एक्सपीरियंस में ऐसा क्या ये सही है, और आपके एक्सपीरियंस में कैसे रहा है? तो आप इसके बारे में बता पाएंगे रेशमा मैम?
बिल्कुल ललिता, हमारे एक्सपीरियंस में हमने ये देखा है, एक लॉयर के एक्सपीरियंस से और एक एनजीओ के साथ जुड़ने के हिसाब से, जब स्नेहा मुंबई के अलग अलग बस्तियों में काम कर रहे हैं, तो हमारे पास ऐसे बहुत सी केसेस आती है जहाँ पे बस्तियों में टॉयलेट्स है, जहाँ पे अगर अर्ली मॉर्निंग जाना है या लेट नाइट जाना है तो औरतों के लिए वो बहुत ही अनसेफ होता है. हमने बहुत बार पुलिस के साथ इस बारे में जॉइंट मीटिंग्स की है, और हम जिस एरिया में काम करते हैं वहाँ पे जब ये मुद्दा हमने पुलिस के साथ उठाया था, तो पुलिस ने वो एड्रेस और वो लोकेशन लिख के लिया था, और वहाँ पे जो निर्भया के जो राउंड्स है वो उन्होंने इंक्रीज किए हैं. तो इस तरीके से एक सेफ्टी मेजरमेंट वहाँ पे हुआ था. दूसरा मैं ये भी चीज़ कहूँगी कि हाँ, विक्टिम ब्लेमिंग होता है, क्योंकि आज भी हम लोग पितृसत्ताक व्यवस्था में ही जी रहे हैं, और हमारे पुलिस भी कहीं ना कहीं पे उसी माइंडसेट से आए हैं. तो काफी बार जो स्टॉकिंग के केसेस है या सेक्सुअल हरासमेंट के केसेस है, वहाँ पे एक तरीके से काउंसलिंग भी किया जाता है बहुत बार कि क्या तुम इस केसेस के सीन में आना चाहते हो, फिर तुम्हें बार बार कोर्ट जाना होगा, फिर तुम्हें स्टेटमेंट के लिए बुलाया जाएगा. हमारे जो बॉलीवुड मूवीज है, उन्होंने भी कोर्ट रूम के ड्रामा को इस तरीके से बताया गया है कि अगर आप इस तरीके की केस करते हो तो आपको कोर्ट में किस तरीके से पर्सनल क्वेश्चन पूछे जाते हैं, आपको कैसे ह्यूमिलेट होना पड़ता है. तो वो एक डर भी उस महिला में होता है. साथ में बहुत बार मोलेस्टेशन के केसेस में, या अगर आपको किसी तरीके से सेक्सुअल हरेसमेंट हो रही है स्टेट पे, तो औरतें उसको इग्नोर करने की टेंडेंसी बनाती है, क्योंकि वो आगे का जो प्रोसेस है उसमें नहीं जाना चाहती है. ऊपर से सोशल स्टिग्मा होता है, सोशल स्टिग्मा रहता है घर में. अगर उस तरीके की आज़ादी नहीं है या उस तरीके की सोच नहीं है, तो ये भी हो सकता है कि उसका बाहर निकलना बंद हो जाए या उसके साथ किसी का बॉडीगार्ड बन के आ जाए. हमने बहुत सी ऐसी केसेस देखी हैं जहाँ पे औरत बात करना चाहती है लेकिन उसके माँ बाप या उसके पति उसको बात करने नहीं देते. तो ये बहुत ही आम है जहाँ पे औरत सिर्फ इसलिए चुप हो जाती है कि ये सोशल स्टिग्मा है, और फिर मुझ पे ही ब्लेम आ जाएगा, क्योंकि ये इस तरीके से ब्लेम होते हुए भी हमने देखा है कि आपके कपड़े ऐसे हैं, आप रात में क्यों गए थे, या फिर उस वक्त आप जहाँ पे पुलिस रहते हैं ऐसे लेडीज कंपार्टमेंट में क्यों नहीं चढ़े. तो इस तरीके के बहुत सारे सवाल उस औरत को ही झेलने पड़ते हैं, और शायद इसीलिए वो बाहर आके इस बारे में बात नहीं करती है.
रेशमा मैम, आपने बहुत एक इम्पॉर्टेंट बात कही कि जो पितृसत्तात्मक सोच जो है वो हर इंसान में, पूरे समाज में फैला हुआ है. इसकी वजह से जो है विमेन सेफ्टी को एज एन आइसोलेटेड इंसिडेंट, यानी उसको सिर्फ सेफ्टी के तौर पर देखना ये गलत होगा. तो इसे पूरे समाज में जो व्यवस्था है उसके हिसाब से हमें देखना जरूरी है. सो थैंक यू फॉर दैट. एंड मुझे ये भी, आई ऑल्सो वॉन्टेड टू आस्क अबाउट, what is the root cause of women's safety and access to the city? I would like to open this question up to the panel. Anyone who is interested and who wants to respond to that, please go ahead. Yes.
Can I?
मैम एक्चुअली जो एजुकेशन सिस्टम में चेंजेस आने चाहिए है उसमें इक्वलिटी बतानी पड़ेगी। जो माइंडसेट है, जो अपकमिंग जो जनरेशन है, अगर आप देखोगे अपकमिंग जनरेशन दे आर गिविंग रेस्पेक्ट टू द वुमेन्स है, स्पेशली उसके जो को एजुकेशन का बहुत इफेक्ट पड़ता है। पहले मेल और फीमेल्स की एजुकेशन अलग होती थी, तो वो एक जो वैक्यूम था वो कहीं पर है ना खत्म होते हुए दिख रहा है। अब तो न्यू जनरेशन, अभी आप देखोगे तो न्यू जनरेशन में ऐसे केसेस मिलने बहुत कम आते हैं। मोस्ट ऑफ जो सिटीज में आप देखोगे तो सिटीज में ऐसे केसेस नहीं आ रहे हैं। अब दिल्ली में मैं रिसेंटली आया हूँ तो मैंने देखा है जो बच्चे स्कूल में पढ़ रहे हैं उनका जो माइंडसेट है वो वैसा नहीं है। तो एजुकेशन का बहुत इफेक्ट पड़ता है। पेरेंट्स को भी ये बताना पड़ेगा कि हमारे घर में हमारी बहन भी है, बेटी भी है, माँ भी है, तो ये इन चीज का रेस्पेक्ट करना बहुत कंपलसरी होता है और बहुत जरूरी भी है इनके रेस्पेक्ट करना। और मोस्ट ऑफ जो है थिंकिंग है, अगर आप चाहे ना कितनी भी आप सीवियर इम्प्लीमेंटेशन लेके आओ या कुछ भी कानून व्यवस्था बढ़ा दो, या आप चाहे क्या थे उसकी पनिशमेंट्स बढ़ा दो, इससे सुधार नहीं आएगा जब तक आना आप रिफॉर्म्स नहीं लेके आओगे। जब तक आप एजुकेशन में रिफॉर्म्स नहीं लेके आओगे, को एजुकेशन को आप बढ़ावा नहीं दोगे, तो जब तक ये नहीं होने वाला। और हर किसी को बताना पड़ेगा कि बाबा वुमेन्स आर इक्वल एज ए मेल। दैट्स ऑल।
थैंक यू। या रेशमा मैम, आप बोलना चाहेंगे?
जैसे कमलेश जी ने कहा उसको ही आगे जोड़ते हुए मैं ये कहूँगी कि औरतों को बेसिक ह्यूमन राइट से डिनाई किए जाते हैं। बहुत बार घरों में ही जिस तरीके से औरतों के साथ बर्ताव होता है, तो जो न्यू जनरेशन है वो भी वही सीखते हैं कि औरत एक ऑब्जेक्टिव है, उनको अपना व्यक्तित्व नहीं है, उनको हाँ या ना बोलने का अधिकार है या नहीं। ये सारी चीज़ें हमारे घर से ही लोग सीखते हैं। जिस तरीके से सोसाइटी में सीखते हैं उसी तरह से घर में भी सीखते हैं। और औरत का जो एक पर्सनालिटी है या उसकी जो गरिमा है, अगर हम वो सारी गरिमा उसकी वर्जिनिटी पे लाके छोड़ देंगे तो जो बोलना चाहती है वो भी नहीं बोलते हैं। तो जो वर्जिनिटी को लेके जो स्टिग्मा है उसको किस तरीके से हम कम कर सकते हैं, ये भी देखना बहुत जरूरी है।
Harish, would you like to go ahead?
Yeah, sure. So I think अभी जो बाकी के पैनलिस्ट ने कहा, somewhere I want to add to that कि जेंडर बेस्ड वायलेंस में एक प्रकार है जो वुमेन सेफ्टी से जुड़ा हुआ है, करेक्ट? द वाइडर पिक्चर ऑफ जेंडर बेस्ड वायलेंस, ये कोई वुमेन के पेक्यूलियर प्रॉब्लम्स की वजह से तैयार हुए प्रॉब्लम्स नहीं है। यू नो, ये प्रॉब्लम्स किस लिए तैयार हैं? ये ज्यादा से ज्यादा महिलाओं पर हिंसा, बुरा व्यवहार करने वाले कौन है? ज्यादा से ज्यादा पुरुष। हाँ, ये तो वास्तव है, ये तो अनडिनाइंग है, मतलब ये कॉन्टेस्टेबल नहीं है, बिल्कुल ये सही है ना कि ज्यादा से ज्यादा हिंसा किनकी ओर से हो रही है? तो पुरुषों के द्वारा। और पुरुषों के द्वारा हो रही है, हमें ये भी मालूम है that by birth men are not aggressive, by birth men are not violent. It's because of the social construction of gender, construction of masculinity. तो अगर ये सामाजिक रचित है तो मतलब बदलने की भी गुंजाइश समाज द्वारा ही हो सकती है। समाज द्वारा ये रचा गया है तो इसे बदलने की जिम्मेदारी भी समाज की ही है। लेकिन क्या हो रहा है कि पहले तो ये सवाल पुरुषों का सवाल है, ये मुद्दा ही नहीं देखा जा रहा है। ये अब तक जेंडर इशू काफी सालों से एज अ वुमेन्स इशू करके देखा गया है। और अभी के दौर पे ना केवल वुमेन बट कि उतना ही ट्रांसजेंडर व्यक्ति का इशू है, उतना ही गे व्यक्ति का इशू है। सो विच मीन्स दोज जेंडर्स विच आर ऑप्रेस्ड, the issue is seen as of something which matters to them only. Whereas the reality is, अगर पुरुषों का औरत के प्रति देखने का नजरिया इस समस्या के जड़ में है, अगर जो प्रिविलेजेस पुरुष एंजॉय करते हैं, आसपास घूमना, भटकना, खुलेआम बिना झिझक भटकना, ये जो है, जो राइट हर एक सिटीजन का है, लेकिन पुरुषों को लगता है मेरा ये प्रिविलेज है, और ये privilege as if a right है और इस पे आँच नहीं आने चाहिए. So therefore this issue about gender is often seen as perceived as something which is an attack on men, whereas actually in the real struggle for a gender just society, men are not our enemy. Because if men were enemy, then all men would have been enemies. Why is it we see that some men are sensitive and caring? Why is it we see that all men are not violent or aggressive? Because it's of the upbringing, because it's a social construct, you know, and because it's a social construct, the phrase Kamleshji said earlier, that dominating mindset, but I would add male dominating mindset. So it's the male dominating mindset which needs to change, which is at the roots of the problem. And if that is so, we have to examine if they are part of the problem. Are they really seen as part of the solution? The answer, sadly speaking, is that by many stakeholders, the role of engaging men as a part of the solution, there's hardly even thought, I would say. If the thought is not there, then the action will flow from there, obviously. But if the thought is not there, and I would say that even with respect to solution can be of two types. One is at the curative or as a response. When violence is happening, when there are incidents of unsafe which are reported, you know, so even in legal parlance, there are two words. One is redressal after an incident has happened. The other is prohibitive, means it is happening and you stop there. You make a full stop. So prohibit, you know, derived from the bacteria and the microbiology, prohibit. So if incidents are happening at a curative level, earlier we talked about helpline mechanisms where there is redressal, and redressal, how speedily it is. Yeah, the conviction rate is low because the pieces of evidence are not strongly put up. And the pieces of evidence by largely men in uniform, including other police people, also including women. What I mean is, if the majority of the police force is by men, if their mindsets and attitudes are not touched upon, and they are just seen as law enforcing agencies, they are supposed to protect and they are supposed to be followers of the law. Why will they follow the law when in their own personal lives, their attitude towards looking at women are not at all examined? If they are not at all examined by the others, leave aside by the men themselves, that is not seen as a priority. So I'll just give a very crude example. So if at all gender sensitization of the police is a tick mark, the approach is tell them about the laws related to women. And you know, as a crash course, often the pretext is told they are always busy people. So half an hour, half a day workshop, tell about all the laws, which is fine. But if you don't have a session where they can examine why they should be talking about the laws, what it has to do with their own lives, talking about toxic masculinity vis-a-vis their own approaches towards ideas about being a man, if that is not examined, when will they examine? When they will get a space to examine. If in the course of their duty, they don't get a time to examine these things, then it is the duty or the onus of the others to make sure that they examine. Because all of us want the city to be safer, right? For them to be a priority number one, we have to ensure that what efforts are we doing to ensure that they are on their toes, that they realize that this is an equally important social issue like any other issue. So I find, so whether at the curative level and at the preventive level, to which I think we will be going, but I wanted that both are feeding over each other. If for the curative level, a large number of women should be approaching without fear for help, if that is the expectation, that can happen when there are conversations happening amongst men. about women's safety. Sadly speaking, those conversations are not happening. When I say men, men in all positions of power, men in all systems, whether it is media, whether it is governance, whether it is families, whether it is in religion, are the men in all these subsystems involved in conversations related to safety and related to gender related matters? Are there conversations where they are engaged in? The answer is no. So I'll give you a simple another example that in Mumbai there is a place called the Gender Resource Center, established precisely by the then Deputy Commissioner of Police, Municipal Commissioner, uh, Radha was her name. So she established that premises with the idea that the city should be safer. Now that premises is named as Savitribai Phule Stree Sansadhan Kendra in Marathi, and translated in English, Savitribai Phule Gender Resource Center. So Stree Sansadhan Kendra means a gender resource center, which means only woman is the gender counted by the BMC. So they will have workshops and several activities revolving around women. But municipal corporation has constituents which include male health workers, male educationists. Yeah, is there a role for that particular building, that particular center to engage the male citizens? So there's no, design, as I think that word Samira mentioned, in the design of, you thought that this particular premise, this particular gender resource center will look into the problems, and precisely the objective was that to keep the Mumbai safer city for women. That has been the objective for which it was formed almost 10 years ago. The question is, even till date, is there any plan to engage men as a part of the solution? When I say engage men, their own men in the municipal corporation, is there an effort made? So I think, I find, like somewhere, and the second, I think I'll just add this point, in our fight for a gender just society, there is often the raising of men that they have to be protectors. I think the message has to go far and clear that women are capable of protecting their own bodies. We should be talking about protecting the rights which the men enjoy as a privilege, but the same rights women also should be enjoying. So we should be all talking about protecting that.
Yes,
So
I
I think
agree.
that enabling environment where youngsters, young men, and men in other positions of power realize this, that what are they supposed to protect? They are supposed to protect the rights which they have been enjoying for years. So in a way, in the struggle, men will have to give away their privileges.
Yes, I agree.
And I think
Samira, would you
that
like
is
to weigh
what
in
the
on this?
conversation should happen. But
I agree.
unfortunately, these are all interlinked issues,
Yes.
which at all the constituents of society, all the stakeholders, different stakeholders have to pitch in and have to play their role,
I
to
agree.
ensure that it's a collective responsibility.
Yes,
Yeah.
I completely agree. Samira, would you like to weigh in on
So
this
I
by also?
agree. Yeah, I agree with all the panelists, and really, Harish really spread out all the tentacles of how complicated the issue is. And there's no one little switch we press and we change everything. We have to work at multiple levels. And what he was talking about, why are men not the solution? I mean, this involves them as well, and they should be. And Harish's group has been working very actively, and many other groups now, NGOs are adding components. I noticed Reshma put that Sneha is also working with men. A lot of other non-profits are doing this. But I think as a statewide policy to understand the gender includes not just women, includes men, and everybody has to be part of the solution is very critical. And also the understanding what, when this about thing of patriarchy ke baare mein jo baat kar rahe the, it's when you're training, I'm just a policeman, we're training police. So we say we have to train policemen and policewomen, not assume women in positions of power, whether they're cops or lawyers or whatever, that they understand and they can negotiate patriarchy और वो सब भाई सब समझते हैं. That's not true. We all are products of patriarchy. We have to de-school ourselves, including women, to understand the the privileges, power. We have to understand this play before we can attack it and say we all need to be part of the fight. So it's औरतों को please also इनको really change. But I agree with Harish. हम ज्यादातर definitely non-profits में तो औरतों को बीच में रखते हैं और train करते हैं, लेकिन we still don't do enough with men across structures. But I don't see it institutionally happening from the state. That is one. दूसरी बात ये है जो आज रेशा दत्ता ने बहुत अच्छा से कहा था कि ये जो एवरीडे वायलेंस होता है कि बहुत लड़कियां बताती नहीं है इसके बारे में. एंड एक्चुअली व्हाट वी आर सीइंग द रिकॉर्डेड फिगर, जब प्रजा रिपोर्ट देख लें या लेटेस्ट एनसीआरबी स्टैटिस्टिक्स which came out in August this year, which said that crimes against women have grown by 15.3% in 2021 from the previous 2020. And we're talking about actually more interesting was the rate of crimes against women, the rate of number of incidents per 1 lakh population, that has gone up to 64.5% in 2021 from 56% in 2020. So the rate of crime has actually gone, and these are only the recorded figures. Women who are sort of or people who were attacked, who were actually really courageous to come forward and give evidence and sit through this process, like the woman you talked about in that railway compartment. So this is the tip of the iceberg. If आपके आंकड़े अगर बढ़ रहे हैं, लेकिन ये सिर्फ tip of the iceberg है, because this is not all the recorded violence. Violence तो और भी है, जो people who cannot come forward. And I really want to talk about this everyday violence. हम लोग मीडिया में, because I come from journalism, इतना बात करते हैं कि भाई ये निर्भया का हुआ, ये शक्ति न्यूज में हुआ, ये about this so-called the big rape case, the really terrible case. लेकिन ना ये जो everyday violence against women होता है, both at home and outside home, and this is very important, क्योंकि आंकड़े definitely दिखाते हैं कि जो percentage rate of crime बढ़ा है, सबसे ज़्यादा private violence से बढ़ा है. Most of it is by cruelty by husband and relatives, by families. But people are supposed to be close to you. So ज़्यादातर private violence सबसे ज़्यादा खतरनाक है इस country में औरतों के लिए. All the people close to you. And this NCRB statistics have shown every year. It has not changed. Okay. तो लेकिन हाँ जो मीडिया में जो चर्चा होती है सिर्फ पब्लिक वायलेंस की होती है और जो स्ट्रेंजर बेस्ड वायलेंस होती है, जो लोग आप जानते हैं और आपको महीने से स्टॉक कर रहे हैं और कर रहे हैं, उनकी वायलेंस काउंट नहीं की जाती. ये स्ट्रेंजर वायलेंस ये बिल्कुल 7% है by statistics. 94% cases are actually of people you know, or people you known to you, or people who are supposedly to protect you or love you, or under all those guises. And this is very important. And we don't talk enough about this, so we're really nervous about the family and talking about that. और ये everyday violence के बहुत protective influence हो. जैसे रेशमा जी ने बहुत अच्छे से बोला था कि जब लड़की बताती नहीं है, बिकॉज उसको मालूम है उसको प्राइस पे करना पड़ेगा उसी को. अगर उसका कॉलेज जाना बंद हो जाएगा, उसका ट्यूशन क्लास बंद हो जाएगा, वो उस रास्ते से जा नहीं पाएगी. एंड आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट एवरीडे वायलेंस के नुक्कड़ पे आपको हैसल करते हैं, कुछ आपके कपड़ों के बारे में कहते हैं. जब ये एवरीडे होता है ना, इट इज हमला, इट इज वायलेंस. It is not that one stray comment. It is a comment every day. Constant comment, touch, something or the other. आप पुलिसमैन से बात करेंगे तो कुछ हुआ ही नहीं भाई, अब कुछ हो. And in stalking, we've seen stalking law only came in 2013 after the Mumbai case. And we are seeing a horrible time. They still tell you, despite a law, कि भाई कुछ होगा, वो कुछ करेगा. And there have been so many terrible cases where women have reported, their families have even been supportive, and yet they've been assaulted so badly, they've been killed. For that. And this is, it's just very horrifying. So do not ignore everyday street violence, which may not be your major Shakti Mills or Nirbhaya or involve an iron rod, but it really has consequences in women's lives. Women in interviews constantly talk about how they have to drop college, drop school, drop a class, drop a job, which is too far away, or went through a route. Women constantly take longer time to get from point A to point B. They're not walking straight, they're walking here, left, right, and going into a lane and coming out from a lane. We've done these following a woman. The women walk longer distances, the commute. There are lots of issues with that. And so, the overall thing is that, and the other thing is cops, law enforcement, yes, but I think it's a larger society thing. So we need to work with bystander training, which people have started doing, but really talk about community around. कि हमारे neighborhood में कोई harass नहीं करेगा. सिर्फ औरतों को नहीं, एक गे पर्सन को नहीं हैरेस करेगा, एक ट्रांस पर्सन को हैरेस नहीं करेगा. हम एज ए कम्युनिटी ही लेते हैं कि जीरो टॉलरेंस हमारे नेबरहुड में होगा और हम सब जिम्मा लेते हैं. तो पुलिस को तो हम बुला लेंगे, उनके साथ बातचीत करेंगे, लेकिन हम सब जीरो टॉलरेंस, तो हम सब इन्वॉल्व हैं इससे. हम सबकी, नॉट बिकॉज सब औरतें हमारी माँ है और बेटी है, सिस्टर है, क्योंकि औरतें citizens हैं हमारे जैसे, all so women and men together have to do it as a community. So I think just law enforcement is a problematic idea also. I think all communities have to be involved and take it as a very important step.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lalita,
yeah.
Just wanted to add, to what Samira was telling. So I think the bystanders phenomenon or syndrome has been there for a long time, including in city like Mumbai. Like day by day, people get, you find umpteen examples where, people are just watching mute spectators, the crime happening, and as petty thing, it can be whistling, it can be touching, and unless and until people become upstanders, which is the word I would use rather than, so they have to be proactively, encouraged as vigilant citizens, as someone, who has a responsibility towards, so as she said that, I think, it should be women as well as men, from the neighborhood, from the community, who should make proactive measures. We had this classic case in the city of Mumbai, which has taught a lesson to the world. There were case of Ruben, two young boys, Keenan and Ruben, from Amboli, Andheri area, who risked their lives. Their girlfriends were being eve teased, and they intervened timely, because they felt that it is their responsibility to ensure that the women around them are safer. So I think, that kind of inculcation of that values and the enabling environment where the neighboring people take the onus on them, I think we'll have to, there is no option for that. See, of course, for that, the allaying of fears, what Reshma earlier said, that the fear that if I intervene, I will have to go to the police several times. If I intervene, what God forbids, if something happens to me, those fears have to be allayed, and it has to be told that you have the safeguards, the legal safeguards. So as per the law, if suppose you intervene and God forbid something happens, then in your own safety, you can hit the other person and diffuse the situation. So there are safeguards available, but at the same time, there should be efforts by the police also to ensure the citizens that they won't be harassed again and again repeatedly, that their one time, whatever they say will be taken. They don't have to be as witness coming and repeatedly to the police station. So I think that kind of enabling environment also has to be there, where you respect of the other person's time and effort and do not cause anxiety to the witness.
Yes,
I think
agreed.
that also.
Kamlesh, would you like to weigh in on this to sort of substantiate what Harish is also saying? Kamlesh, आप बताना चाहेंगे?
मैं समीरा जी और हरीश जी के बात से थोड़ा करना चाहूंगा कि जब पुलिस कंप्लेंट करने जाते हैं तो वुमेन्स के लिए वुमेन्स ही होती है, तो स्टिग्मा का कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं आता है कि मतलब स्टिग्मा, हाँ फैमिली में बताए तो फैमिली वाले शायद उनको जाने से मना कर दे, कहीं पे कॉलेज जाने से मना कर दे या उस लाइन से जाना मना कर दे, लेकिन है ना उसके लिए सीक्रेट हेल्पलाइंस भी होती है। जैसे मैंने मुंबई रेलवे पुलिस के हेल्पलाइन में मैंने काम किया है, तो मैं बताता हूँ, मैंने ना बहुत से बार जो केसेस जो सॉल्व किए हैं, तो मैंने जो विक्टिम होता है उसके ना पेरेंट्स को पता चलने दिया, ना उसको रिलेटिव्स को पता चलने दिया, ना उसके फ्रेंड्स को पता चलने दिया कि उसके ऊपर ऐसे हो रहा है। तो मैंने लोकल पुलिस स्टेशन से मदद ली थी, और जो वुमेन्स थी उसकी आइडेंटिटी को हिडन रखा था कि बाबा उसका डिस्क्लोज नहीं किया जाए, उसकी आइडेंटिटी डिस्क्लोज नहीं जाए, नहीं तो उसको प्रॉब्लम होगी। सेकेंड एंड फॉल, अब जो ऐसे जो बोल रहे थे कि मेल से पैट्रियार्किक है, पुलिस में भी है, तो नियर अबाउट 33% वुमेन्स एनरोल होती है पुलिस में। जब भी रिक्रूटमेंट होती है तो 33% उनका कोटा होता है, तो वुमेन्स के लिए वुमेन्स ही है। वुमेन्स जब भी कोई कंप्लेंट लेके आती है रिलेटेड टू सेक्स रिलेटेड, मतलब सेक्स एक्सटॉर्शन होगा, टीजिज्म होगा, कुछ भी होगा, उसके लिए क्या बोलते वुमेन्स ही उसको अटेंड करती है। तो 24/7 वुमेन्स जो ऑफिसर्स होते हैं वो अवेलेबल होते हैं पुलिस स्टेशन में। सेकंड, जो वुमेन्स को कोई कंप्लेंट होगा तो उसको लॉन्च करने के लिए। सेकंड एंड फॉल, आप जो बोल रहे थे एविडेंस को हरासमेंट, तो ये सुप्रीम कोर्ट का ऑर्डर है कि ये जो एविडेंस है, जो बीच में जो पड़ता है, बार बार पुलिस जो आपको परेशान करती है, तो ये सुप्रीम कोर्ट का ऑर्डर है कि एविडेंस को बार बार कोई परेशान नहीं करेगा और एविडेंस से एक हेल्पफुल जितनी मदद हो सकती है उतनी मदद ले सकते हैं, लेकिन उसको हराश नहीं किया जाएगा। तो ये मेरे ख्याल से जो सोसाइटी है वो अवेयर नहीं है, तो सोसाइटी को वो अवेयरनेस फैलानी बहुत जरूरी है कि आपको आपके राइट्स क्या है। मेन थिंग इज दैट कि लोगों को अपने राइट्स ही नहीं पता, वुमेन्स को अपने राइट्स नहीं पता, उनको अवेयर करने की बहुत जरूरत है। मैं बोलना चाहूंगा एजुकेशन सिस्टम में चेंजेस की बहुत जरूरत है। अब पैट्रियार्की बोलते हो तो नॉर्थ इंडिया में स्टिल द पर्दा सिस्टम इज एग्जिस्ट इन नॉर्थ इंडिया, बट इफ यू गो इन द साउथ देयर इज अ नो पर्दा सिस्टम। If you get the Kerala or Tamil Nadu, there is a no dupatta to the women. And if you get Kerala, there you will see that कि जो वुमेन्स होती है वही हेड होती है, वही डिसाइड करती है फैमिली मैटर्स जो भी कुछ होता है। तो सर मुंबई मेट्रोपॉलिटन सिटी है, यहाँ पर नॉर्थ इंडियन से पीपल आते हैं और साउथ इंडियन से पीपल आते हैं। तो अगर आप मुंबई की बात करते हो तो मुंबई सेफर है, लेकिन इतनी सेफर जो आप बोल रहे हो उतनी सेफर नहीं है। जो डार्क प्लेसेस है, समीरा जी जो कह रही थी डार्क प्लेसेस में प्रोटेक्शन प्रोवाइड नहीं हो सकता, यस मैम, वहां पर प्रोटेक्शन प्रोवाइड करना नॉट पॉसिबल, क्योंकि हमारे जो रिसोर्सेस है, पुलिस जो है, यंत्रणा है, वो इतनी नहीं है कि हर जगह पे वुमेन्स को प्रोवाइड कर सके। और हरीश जी के जो कमेंट्स था कि बाबा रिफॉर्म्स मेंस में भी लाने चाहिए, ये उनसे भी मैं एग्री हूँ कि मेल्स में जो रिफॉर्म्स है वो आने चाहिए और मेल्स ने खुद ने इनिशिएटिव लेना चाहिए वुमेन्स प्रोटेक्शन के लिए।
Thank you. Yes, I agree. Yeah. So, कमलेश जी, आपने जो बताया कि रिफॉर्म्स की बहुत जरूरत है और जो एग्जिस्टिंग इश्यूज है उसे एड्रेस करने की जरूरत है, I'd like to bring in Elsa Marie De Silva from the Red Dot Foundation. So, I mean, I think talking about the kind of infrastructural and planning related participative models that we've been talking about throughout the session, I think the Red Dot Foundation's initiative in this regard is important to mention. So, Elsa, could you please explain about the initiatives that you guys have undertaken?
Yes, thank you first of all for having me, and this discussion has been absolutely fascinating. Thanks to all for sharing their work. So I started Safe City, which is a crowd map for anonymous documentation of sexual and gender-based violence 10 years ago. It was an immediate response to the gang rape of Jyoti Singh. And at that time, I was in the private sector, and in the private sector, we use a lot of data for business decisions. And when I tried to make sense of the problem, I could not find any information or statistics, except for this one, which unfortunately is even used till today. 1 in 3 women on an average experience sexual violence at least once in their lifetime. So the aim of Safe City was really to bridge the data gap between the daily lived reality that women and girls and other vulnerable communities face and the underreporting that has already been spoken about. And you started off with saying that Praja has released a report where, several of these cases have not even been actioned. So when we're talking about sexual violence or gender-based violence or public space violence, do we even know what it means, what shape and form it takes? And therefore, the data on our Safe City map is absolutely critical in, first of all, understanding the kind of violence that is happening where. And what we collect is what happened to you, where did it happen, the date and time, and this is then triangulated to help you understand the local patterns and trends. So we spoke about transportation, for example. A city like Mumbai, where millions are traveling by train every day, how safe is the transport? And is it the same experience that everyone has? Or is it different? And is it contributed not just by the socio-cultural factors that were spoken about, but also the infrastructure? So to break it down, where exactly is this violence happening? It's not happening maybe inside the ladies' compartment, but it could be happening on the platform. It could be happening outside the railway station, on the overfoot bridges, at the auto stall. So can we identify that for each of those railway stations and then determine what is the course of action? Then what does that violence look like? Is it touching and groping? Is it stalking? Is it a combination of both? Is it commenting, staring, leering, which again contributes to the feeling of being unsafe? So each of these needs a different response to it. So I think that's what we are trying to do, build the intelligence from these stories, make it available open source so anyone anywhere can use it to engage with their local communities, and then drive institutional accountability. We all are part of communities, so we don't have to be alone in our experience. First of all, the anonymous platform helps to break the silence. And then the second part is, can we, with our friends and with our community, actually take this data, be it to the police or the railway authority or our campus official or even our community leaders, and say, are you okay with this? And then actually work with them to find solutions. I think safety is everybody's business. Sexual violence is not a women's issue alone, it's a societal issue. And at Red Dot Foundation, we are not only deploying this tech platform across the world. Sneha, incidentally, is a partner with us on the tech platform in Mumbai, but we have local partners all over. We partner with educational institutions and their students. We are conducting bystander intervention, so strategies on how do you respond to this violence without putting yourself at risk. We have a massive program in Maharashtra training 50,000 people. The other interesting thing that came out in our data is that young people, when they face violence, they don't go to any adult or they don't go to their parents, they don't go to their education, their teacher or their principal, because their mobility or their freedoms will be curtailed. So what they do is they go tell a friend. Unfortunately, the friend doesn't really know what to do in such a situation. So the education piece is really critical. Education piece on what is this violence about? What is the continuum of violence? How does it look like? What are the socio-cultural norms that promote this violence? How can you challenge it? How can you be a better bystander? We've spoken about laws. Most people don't know about the laws. India as a country has these laws, but where's the knowledge of these laws, the implementation of the laws? And then finally, how do we build trust with these institutions? What we are seeing with our data and the deployment of our data in these communities, it can be a starting point for dialogue. It's a starting point to build trust with these authorities. And the response from the communities to the various forms of violence are very different. Some people choose to use wall murals at key locations. Some people choose to do street theater, and Marwa is great at street theater. It could be just owning that space, and While Loiter and even Blank Noise have done excellent work in that area. Or actually going to the police station and just demanding accountability, asking for better surveillance. We've had elected representatives actually turn around and say, we have budgets for women's safety, and now you can actually demand how that budget is spent. So that's how in various places. We spoke about street lighting. I want to point out that often people think that fixing street lights will get rid of the problem. Unfortunately, not. Our data shows for many different cities, the peak is between 12 and 2 p.m. And that's broad daylight. So violence is happening in broad daylight. That's why it's very important for people to understand this violence. Why is it happening? Of course, why is it happening? We all know. But where is it happening? What kind of violence is happening? What are the contributing factors? And can we, start to minimize the risk? And I would encourage everyone to go to safecity.in, take a moment to record and document your experience, because if you've never done that, in reality, it never happened. There's no proof of it happening. And once you've done that, check out the crowd map for Mumbai. We have over 4,000 stories. You can see location-based trends and start to use that data to engage with your community, engage with your authorities, and ask for answers. And again, what is being reported on our site is touching, groping, stalking, commenting, and all these, which are considered often trivial to go to the police and make a formal complaint. So I would encourage everyone, please go and check out our site and do start to break the silence, start to talk about it. And you can use evidence-based data to make that difference.
Thank you, Elsa. That was very insightful. I'd like to, continue this conversation about legal awareness and resources by asking Reshma, what is it that you would like to tell our audience about legal awareness? Yeah, Reshma,
Lalita,
over to
also
you.
there is question for Reshma. So Reshma, आपके लिए question है, मैं वो भी पढ़ देता हूँ, so you can include that in your answer. Satrupa, she's from our team. She's asked, what is the level of awareness regarding legal and other redress channels that do exist?
Okay. Yeah. What is the level? अगर हम इसकी बात करेंगे ना, तो हमारे पास बहुत सी ऐसे केसेस आती है जहाँ पे ऑनलाइन स्टॉकिंग हो रहा है या सेक्सुअल हरासमेंट हो रहा है, और उस केसेस में सिर्फ दोनों पार्टीज को बुला के समझाया जाता है और छोड़ा जाता है, और औरत को ये पता भी नहीं रहता है कि ये सेक्शन जो है वो आईपीसी के सेक्शंस में एफआईआर होनी चाहिए। तो ये भी बहुत बार होता है। ये लीगल अवेयरनेस नहीं है, ये तो सच बात है। और अगर जिनमें अवेयरनेस है, जैसे मैंने पहले भी कहा था कि वो केसेस नहीं करना चाहते हैं। बहुत सारी चीज़ें हैं, जैसे समीरा और हरीश ने भी कहा था कि वो केसेस ही नहीं करना चाहती क्योंकि स्टिग्मा भी है, और ये जो लीगल बैटल है वो बहुत प्रोलॉन्ग है। अगर मैं एक 354 की केसेस जो हमारी 2014 में फाइल हुई थी, अभी तक उसकी ट्रायल ही शुरू है। तो ये इतना लॉन्ग बैटल एक कोर्ट में जो चलता है, उसको लेके भी काफ़ी परेशानी जो होती है वो औरत को सहन करनी होती है, इसलिए भी वो नहीं जाना चाहती। और जिस केसेस में वो केसेस फाइल करती है, वहाँ पे क्या होता है ना, या तो उनको ऑनलाइन पता चलता है। बहुत बार हमने लॉकडाउन में देखा है कि जब हम सर्च करते हैं तो जो नियरेस्ट एनजीओ है या जो हेल्पलाइंस है वहाँ पे वो कॉल किए जाते हैं। अब अगर तब उनको सही तरीके से नहीं बताया गया कि क्या करना चाहिए, तो वो वहीं पे हॉस्टाइल होने के चांसेस होते हैं। अगर उसको बताया गया कि क्या करना है, कैसे करना है, तो वो केस आगे बढ़ सकती है। दूसरा है कि अगर पुलिस स्टेशन में वो जाती है तो वहाँ से केस एक आगे बढ़ सकती है। अगर वो हेल्थ केयर प्रोवाइडर के पास जाती है और वो बताती है कि मेरे साथ ये सब चीज़ें हुई है, तो बहुत बार हेल्थ केयर प्रोवाइडर्स भी उनको नहीं बताते कि आप इसमें एफआईआर फाइल कर सकते हो या आप एमएलसी फाइल कर सकते हो। इसीलिए हम जिन भी बस्तियों में काम कर रहे हैं, स्नेहा मुंबई की जो 7-8 बस्तियों में काम कर रहे हैं, हम लोग कोशिश कर रहे हैं कि हम वहाँ की जो महिला वॉलंटियर्स है उनको इस बारे में जानकारी दें कि अगर उनकी बस्ती में इस तरीके से कोई भी हरकत हो रही है तो वो इमीडिएट पुलिस को बताना, हेल्पलाइन के बारे में अवेयरनेस करना, जो महिलाओं के लिए कानून है उसके लिए अवेयरनेस करना। ये बहुत ही बड़े पैमाने पे हम लोग स्नेहा जिन बस्तियों में काम कर रहा है उस बस्तियों में कर रहे हैं। लेकिन मैं ये ज़रूर कहूँगी कि जिस तरीके से हरीश ने कहा था कि जो भी फंड है उसको ठीक तरीके से चैनलाइज करना ज़रूरी है। हम लोग नहीं देखते हैं एडवर्टाइजमेंट इस सारे विषयों पे कि अगर आपके साथ हरासमेंट हो रही है, स्ट्रीट हरासमेंट हो रही है, या अगर आपके घर में वायलेंस हो रहा है, तो आपको कहाँ पे जाना चाहिए, किस तरीके से जाना चाहिए, और आपको अगर कोई आपकी स्टेटमेंट नहीं ले रहा है या आपकी केस को एड्रेस नहीं हो रहा है तो आप क्या कर सकते हो, इसके बारे में बहुत ही अच्छी तरीके से एडवर्टाइजमेंट करना ज़रूरी होता है। हम लोग बड़े बड़े होर्डिंग्स अलग विषयों पे देखते हैं, बट इस बारे में बात करना बहुत ज़रूरी है। इसके बारे में जो स्क्रोल है वो अगर हमारी रेलवेज में और बसेस में अगर स्क्रोल होगा कि अगर यू आर फेसिंग सेक्सुअल हरासमेंट तो आप क्या कर सकते हो, व्हाट आर द सेक्शंस, क्या आता है सेक्सुअल हरासमेंट के अंडर। क्योंकि बहुत बार जैसे हमारे एक स्पीकर ने भी कहा कि जो अलग अलग फॉर्म्स उनके वेबसाइट पे उन्होंने देखे हैं, तो इस तरीके के जो वॉयलेंस है अगर हम रिपोर्ट करेंगे तो क्या हो सकता है, इस तरीके की एनिमेटेड फिल्म्स निकाल के हम सोशल मीडिया पे दे सकते हैं। हम सोशल मीडिया पे देखते हैं कि बहुत सारी रील्स है जो वुमेन वायलेंस को प्रमोट करती है। तो हम इस तरीके के रील्स बनाए कि अगर आपके साथ वायलेंस हो रहा है तो आप कौन सा नंबर, हेल्पलाइन नंबर है जो आप दबा सकते हो, उसके बाद आप कौन से सेक्शंस में अप्लाई कर सकते हो, ऑनलाइन कंप्लेंट कैसे फाइल कर सकते हो। तो ये सारी चीजें हमें सोशल मीडिया के द्वारा, अलग अलग प्लेटफॉर्म के द्वारा पब्लिश करना बहुत ज़्यादा ज़रूरी है, क्योंकि अभी भी इसको जितना अवेयरनेस होना चाहिए उतना नहीं है।
I agree. I think सबके बातों से everyone here has been talking about the need to talk about it, the need for conversations. And I think
Yes.
Prachi's question to Samira about her experience with Why Loiter and the metro campaigns that they've been doing is important. Samira, would you like to talk about the Why Loiter campaign experience in metros?
Okay, first of all, I want to say the Violator campaign is not run by the authors of the research project and the book Violator. It's run by readers, the people who read it and felt transformed and wanted to take it a head step forward. So the campaign, for example, is run by a totally different group of people who are readers of the book. So for example, the most recent Antakshi thing, which Neha Singh and Glenn ran in the metro, they landed twice in the last couple of months. But it's an attempt, basically, can you make commuting a sociable experience where there's a positive energy? And the men can be singing, the women can be singing. We can do competitions versus each other, the older and younger women. Some people remember the songs, and the younger women are looking at the older women very differently because the older women know all the songs and the younger women don't know enough. So, basically, can we make commuting a more sociable experience, positive, draw in everybody? All kinds of people, or other people are marginalized. There's no privilege, probably the only privilege is the one who knows the most songs. But, really, can we make it a more sociable? So she said everything when we fight for a claim to space as marginalized citizens, as women, we don't have to with a protest t-shirt or banner or shouting slogans. We can do it in other sociable ways of making, or the Violator idea just to basically claim public space as much as possible. Night or day, can we just be there? Can we play cricket? Can we play football on the beach? Can we take a municipal park up? Because public space is dwindling in general for everybody. So, for example, what Neha Singh often tells me that till Violator came, I didn't realize how little there's this much BMC parks, and half of them are locked, and half of them also are there. So, how do you open them up? So, till you realize that I have to claim it, otherwise the only space I have is a mall, is that I realize that we need to be there. We need to be present with our bodies. We don't have to be protesting or screaming. We could be there having fun. And if there are more women's bodies or people who are trans or all those bodies occupy these spaces, and it becomes part of the normal. This is what bodies are. We are all different bodies, and we can all occupy, and we can to relate to each other still, and count on each other. We don't have to be antagonistic. So all of people say, oh, we should have women only things, women only park timing, women. Yeah, maybe in certain places which are where the lines between men and women are very stringent, we could start with that. But that is not the aim. The goal is eventually to have men, women, trans, queer, heterosexual, all in the same space, and all what we call tolerating each other. You have to have that way you can tolerate each other and be sociable and have some kind of positive thing. So why can't we create more spaces like that just to increase, So that is the attempt, Violator. But Blank Lois, for example, Bangalore is also doing amazing work with this, and with them we've joined campaigns. So many of these groups are working with each other. We're doing need to sleep in the park or taking over spaces, claiming it with your bodies, because you can't really claim it online. You can't keep streaming on Zoom platforms or on social media. You have to be in public space right there. So that is just to make it more an enjoyable experience, but it's actually we need to be there before change. Besides many other things which have been mentioned today, we need to do many more things.
Yes, completely agree. I think this conversation has touched upon so many aspects, and I really would like to thank all the participants. And Elsa, thank you so much. You joined in from across miles across the world, and you joined in, you chipped in. So, I mean, I'm really happy that this happened. So thank you to all panelists. So today we covered from women's safety, which a singular topic called women's safety. We spoke about claiming spaces, we spoke about data, we spoke about legal awareness, we spoke about the concept of women expanding to gender and gender being a spectrum, and about how masculinity and patriarchy needs to be decondition it and to sort of deconstruct the idea of masculinity and to have conversations. So, and the kind of work that you all are doing in this regard is really commendable. So I really thank you for joining in, and I hope we continue to have more such conversations. So we at Citizen Matters have monthly events. So we keep having webinars and Instagram lives and Twitter spaces and Twitter threads. So I encourage all the listeners, all the audiences to keep yourselves updated about the events that we're continuing to do every month. And another important thing that we would like to take away from this from today's webinar is a collation of resources. So we've compiled a list of resources and helpline numbers and other organizations which are working on gender-based gender justice. So I request you all to look at and to also look at the website of all the organizations who have been on board for this panel discussion. So please do go through our Twitter, our YouTube chat. You'll find resources there, and also to keep sharing the kind of resources that you also have. So yeah, do continue supporting us, and we hope to have more such panel discussions. Thanks so much for joining, and do follow Citizen Matters on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. So yeah, we're Citizen Matters on all these platforms. So thanks a lot for joining once again. And yeah, we'll wrap up with this. Thank you.
Thank you everyone so much. And we will compile a list of resources and we will publish it on the website once we also publish the event report. So I think we should continue to add to these resources so that we can take it forward in whichever way possible, right? As in, I think the Reels idea is really fabulous, Reshma. I think youngsters really connect to Reels. So we should definitely consider that sort. Yeah. Yeah, and thank you so much. Thank you so much, all of you. We'll connect with you soon. Thank you.